Judy says what's wrong with politics is the media. But we're talking about the race to the White House. And joining us now is Norris Clark. He's executive director of United We Stand in New Jersey. He's also a field representative for the Citizens to Establish a Reform Party. Norris, what do you think about a third party in this election?
Well, Dara, thanks for inviting me to be on the program. It's good to be able to get on a suit. You see, I've just come from being out on the streets of 5 states where I've been gathering petitions and working with volunteers that are doing the same. And I'll tell you, there's no doubt about it, the majority of the people in this country are crying out for a third political choice. And let me tell you why. 3 reasons. First of all, most people don't trust the elected officials of the 2 parties. They see them as people that will pander to the public, tell them what they want to hear, and then when they go to Washington, they'll do what the people that are giving them the money want. Secondly, most of us feel like Todd and myself and others, we're politically homeless. We don't have a place to go. Those of us that are fiscally conservative but socially moderate, we don't have a party. During this primary season, you see the parties that are strapped to the radical wings of each of their sides. We don't have something that represents the majority of the people in this country, something that represents what we call the sensible center, the middle. We need a party that represents those folks.
So that's what you're doing now, is trying to get on the ballot, what, in all 50 states?
In all 50 states, so people can have a third alternative, because you see, it's distressing when you see all the problems that we're facing in this country. Look, we can't balance the budget. Our grandchildren are strapped with a $5 trillion debt. We've got Medicare going bankrupt, Social Security that needs to be addressed. We've got tremendous insecurity in this country. People don't know whether they're going to have a job a year from now.
Why would a third party...
People, if they have a job a year from now, they don't know if they're going to have disposable income. And if they do have disposable income, they don't know whether they're going to be able to go out into the streets and spend it.
We know it's the same issues, but you go to the solutions to the issues. You're repeating it. Why should a third party candidate be any more credible than any other party candidate? What is it that you can do that the people that the public chooses from the Democrats or the Republicans that they can't do? What magic potion do you have? Are you cloning someone different from the rest of America? I mean, I'm curious.
Okay, let him answer your
Senator Dole mentioned a minute ago that when the Republican Party got started as a third party, their first independent candidate was Abraham Lincoln, because the people in this country felt strongly about slavery. They wanted to do something about it. So they had to form a third party to pressure the other 2 parties to get something done. We're sick and tired of both parties going cap in hand to all the special interests around the country.
And the third party is going...
We are going to push the parties
We've heard this
for laws to limit the amount of money that they spend.
We're going to hear more in just a moment, but for those affiliates who have to leave us now, we thank you for watching. But as for the rest of you, that's what gives fuel to the fire about a third party.
Absolutely. And the poll that she just mentioned, 20 years ago, if you had asked the same questions, you would have had almost 70% of the people saying they trusted their elected officials. It's never been this bad in the history of the country. And I think it's because of the fact that we force good people to go to Washington, and they get caught up in a system that turns them into political prostitutes. They have to raise so much money so that they can buy these 30-second cheap ads, negative ads, to dump mud on each other.
Who's your candidate? I mean, who's your candidate? I mean, give me an alternative and I'll vote for him.
They don't have $2 billion like Perot to buy 30-minute ads to try to buy the presidency.
Please give me your candidate.
Hang on a second. Let me ask you this, Norris. How would a third-party candidate fare any differently, though? Unless you reform campaign financing, the third-party candidate's going to be in the same boat.
Well, we think that our efforts, look, we're concerned about issues. I would love it if the 2 parties would get their act together and solve the country's problems so I wouldn't have to go out onto the streets getting petitions.
You're tired, aren't you?
I'm happy to have 2 parties. But the problem is, I realized that not until Ross Perot came onto the national scene did the country really focus on the next generation and solving the national debt. The Republicans swept it under the rug. The Democrats didn't want to talk about it. And of course, you know, after Ross Perot came along,
Who's your candidate? Give us a choice. I want to hear it. I for one want to hear it. Who's your candidate?
Look, you all gave a beautiful talk a
Who's
minute
your
ago
candidate?
about having a choice. We're inviting all candidates that feel like we do to step forward and ask for the nomination of our party. We're still reserving the right to endorse. Give us a Martha Washington or a George Washington in the Democratic or Republican Party.
Super Tuesdays in about 2 weeks.
We will be glad to endorse your candidates. But the fact of the
matter... It's all fluff. This is all fluff. It's a great idea, but it doesn't mean anything. The primary process has already started. In 3 more weeks, this will be over. California's in March 26th. Come up with your guy. If you gave me an alternative, I'd be the first one in line.
He may run you, Therese. Be careful. Welcome back. We're in the closing moments of our show today about presidential politics, the Republicans, the Democrats, even an independent party. Norris, there was some talk that maybe Colin Powell was being courted by Ross Perot to run as the candidate for your party.
Colin Powell is a perfect example of the kind of individual we would like to see run as the standard bearer of a third party. Because we want people to have a third option. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to get a third choice. Some of the people in the Republican and Democratic parties do not want to see us get a third choice. They preach competition, free enterprise, free choice, but when it gets right down to it, they get real scared when they get a little competition. So they're doing what they can to throw, obstacles in our way to forming a third party.
But you say you like Colin Powell for your party, but in fact, Colin Powell thought about that and then declared himself a Republican. So
but he said
you're saying the choice you would have given as a third party.
Some of the misgivings that he had about the Republican Party are the same misgivings that we, who are looking for something that's in the middle, what he called the sensible center.
Right.
Others call it the Perot vote. Others call it the moderate
middle. So
middle.
bottom line, you think that Ross Perot will convince Colin Powell to run as an independent candidate? Yes or no?
You don't know.
Okay,
but
you don't
the point
know.
is that this is about getting people a third choice, one that represents the largest segment of the people in this country.
I want to go to the...
Welcome back to News Talk Television. We've been talking about what's going on in politics today. What's happening to the Republican Party and Bob Dole's campaign for the presidency? And what does it mean for the members of the House and the Senate who are running for re-election? Well, joining us now is Norris Clark, the Executive Director of United We Stand and Field Representative for the Reform Party. Norris says the polls show that many people want a third party because they feel politically homeless. Norris, explain what you mean.
Well, Pat, we've been out on the streets of so many states, and we saw the polls, and you weren't sure whether the polls were telling the truth. But after you get out onto the streets of California, Ohio, and Arkansas, and all these other states, and ask people to sign a petition to get the Reform Party on the ballot, you know that there's a lot of people. Most people want to see a third party, and the reason they want to see it, first of all, they don't feel like they're represented. People in my generation who are fiscally conservative but socially moderate, we don't feel like we have a party. Then there's the issue of trust. You know, while the government was shutting itself down, we were out on the streets getting petitions. And people would just roll their eyes. They don't trust their elected officials. We saw last fall Speaker Gingrich and the President of the United States shake hands and promise to give us campaign finance reform. We watched them grip. We got excited. But this idea of campaign finance reform with the two parties has somehow been lost on the ash heap of history. There's no talk about it anymore. There's the issue of economic security. People out there are wondering whether they're going to have a job at the end of the year. And if they do have a job, they're wondering if they're going to be able to have any disposable income. And then if they have any disposable income, they want to know if they're going to be able to safely go out into the streets and spend their money. We want to see a party that represents most people in this country. We want to see a party that represents people and not the big moneyed interests. The final thing is we wonder whether the leadership really has a burning desire, either in the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, to really solve these problems. Let's take campaign finance reform. Senator Dole got with his top 100 fundraisers just last week. He said, what's going on out there? Here's what they said. I'm reading from Time magazine. Top 100 fundraiser. One guy stood up and said, Senator Dole, where do you stand on the Ross Perot issues? Balancing the budget, term limits, campaign finance reform. Senator Dole plunged into a series of proposals and subclauses, got real confusing. No good, said the donor. What was he for? A long and pained silence followed. Quote, it was horrible, said the participant, just horrible. You don't get the sense that there is a burning desire to eliminate the big influence of money on politics.
So is it the money when all those volunteers were out in California getting over 1 million signatures for the Reform Party effort, was that what they were hearing, that they think the whole system is so corrupt that the Republicans as well as the Democrats are being bought by the highest bidder?
Pat, in California, in 18 days, this made history. In 18 days, 120,000 people, 6,000 people a day, left the Democratic Party, left the Republican Party, and joined the Reform Party. 6,000 people a day. All you'd have to do is talk about money and politics in the same breath. People would turn in their tracks, grab a clipboard, and sign a petition. All you had to do was mention NAFTA and selling our jobs overseas. People would turn around and grab a clipboard. Or if you go in places like Ohio, the government shut down.
But Pat, I
So
wonder
the
if I
government should, Linda, but
Debate. Who do you think won? Our next guest is Norris Clark. He's regional spokesperson for Perot, Choate 96, and field representative for the Reform Party. Norris says he is angry that Ross Perot was not allowed to debate. Well, how would the debate have been different if Mr. Perot had been there instead of doing an infomercial before and being on Larry King Live after?
Well, Dara, I have 4 or 5 reasons why the debate would have been different, but let me say, I don't know who won the debate last night, whether it was Dole or Clinton, but I do know the American people lost. They lost because most people wanted to see Ross Perot in the debates. They lost because 40% of the people in this country say that they would consider voting for Ross Perot. There are 10 million people right now that will say that they will vote for Ross Perot. There are 1.4 million people that signed a petition in this country to get the Reform Party on the ballot. There are 80 United States congressmen that said that Ross Perot should be in the debate. And they kept him out because they didn't want to hear what he had to say, and they were afraid that if the Reform Party gets enough votes, that it will be now a major party, and they're going to have to face some competition and some new ideas. And the Republicans and Democrats talk about free enterprise, they talk about competition, they talk about new ideas, but when you get somebody on there that's really going to talk about them, then they keep them out.
Okay, but wasn't it really the Republican Party who was more concerned about Mr. Perot being up there, because Bob Dole perceived Ross Perot as taking more votes away from him than he might from Bill Clinton?
Well, both parties were responsible because they got a debate commission that has 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans. They
That's
voted
right.
unanimously to keep him out. Bob Dole was primarily responsible. He said he wouldn't show up at the debate if Ross Perot was there. He was scared of Ross Perot. But in the end, the President of the United States used Ross Perot and the Reform Party and myself, who's voting for Ross Perot, as a bargaining chip to get what he wanted out of Bob Dole so he could get the number of debates and the kind of format that he wanted.
But he didn't get Oprah Winfrey as the moderator.
He didn't.
He wanted Oprah. Yes, Andy.